Hello and welcome to the Strategic Business Leader course. So we're just going to take a few minutes in this little session to understand what the Strategic Business Leader exam is all about, what the exam format is because it's new in comparison to previous exam formats that you'll have seen in the ACCA qualification, what the content is going to be in the exam, what the syllabus covers, and then what the key points are that we need to bear in mind as we go through the course. So what is the Strategic Business Leader exam? Well, it's a new case study based exam in comparison to the old P1 and P3 exams as they used to be, and in comparison to the short form exams that you'll have experienced up to this point before the strategic professional level. So why have they introduced this type of exam? Well, the key things are that there's going to be a focus on leadership. It's really been driven by what employers want from a professionally qualified accountant. They want leadership, they want professionality, and that's what this exam seeks to instill in the students. So they're looking for those professional capabilities, they're looking to test those professional capabilities and see if you're able to apply them in the exam setting. So it's employer driven, and what we're going to try to do is apply the skills that we've already learned throughout the ACCA course to really try and make sure that we have those professional capabilities that we'll talk about throughout these future sessions. So that's what it is. There's a new exam format. So it's going to be closed book, as with all the ACCA exams. Now there's no pre-seen material, so it shouldn't be advantageous to you to go and research certain industries or get an idea of what's likely to come up, because you're not going to have any idea before you go into the exam as to what type of industry it's going to be based in or what type of entity it is that you're going to be looking at. So all the detail is going to be given to you on the day, and I'll talk about exactly what sort of detail that will be in a second. The exam is going to be 4 hours long, and when we look at that 4 hours, again, we'll talk about this in more detail later, but we need to break that up into about 45 minutes of reading and planning, and then the rest of the time spent actually preparing our answers. This exam, therefore, is meant to be reflective of the workspace in terms of what sort of content you're going to have delivered to you on the day and the sort of detail that you're going to be required to produce. So it's going to focus on skills and competencies. And we'll talk about exactly what those competencies are later on in the course. So it's this new case study based exam. We now know that it's a bit longer. It's going to reflect skills and competencies needed in the workplace. What exactly are you going to be given in the exam? Well, you're going to be given various information and exhibits. So it may be one of or more than one of these things. So it might be an annual report. It might be an integrated report, one and the same thing really these days. It might be a media source such as a newspaper article or some sort of a cutting from a magazine. Whatever it happens to be, it could be from the media. It could be a presentation or spreadsheet. It could be tables. It could be briefing notes. Really, it could be anything that they come up with that will give you information about the entity that you're looking at, and you then will have to use that information to answer the requirements. So as I mentioned, the timing is going to be crucial when it comes to this new exam. You're going to have to take time to read and comprehend and interpret the information that's been given. You're going to need to make sure that you understand the requirements that are asked of you. And you need to consider the skill requirements. This is going to be a massive part of this exam. Again, we'll talk about it in detail later, but there's going to be 20 professional marks. So you're going to have to discern from the question what skills you need to show in order to pick up those marks. So this exam is not just about the content now. It's about applying that content in a professional way in order to pick up those professional marks. In terms of the syllabus then, the syllabus essentially is going to cover the same areas as the old P1 and P3 exams did. So it's going to be leadership, communication, ethics. There's going to be quite a bit of corporate governance in there. There's going to be strategy. So in terms of understanding strategy, suggesting strategy, looking at the strategic resources within the entity, risk and risk management, how we deal with risk and what risks there are to an individual entity. Technology and data analytics becoming more and more important. Big data is something that we'll touch on in this syllabus. Organizational control, how do we control the organization, how do we set it up, and how do we instill those control objectives throughout the entity. We'll also talk about finance and financial strategy, as well as innovation and change management, and lastly, as I mentioned, those professional skills. And we'll look in detail later on at what exactly those professional skills are, and then we'll think about how exactly you'll pick up the marks for them. So the key points when it comes to this strategic business leader is that it's not simply a direct replacement for the old exams. It's a new way of thinking about things. It's got a more coherent approach to it. It's got a more holistic approach, which means that we're trying to meld together all of these things, and we're trying to make sure that the students who sit and pass this exam have the skills and competencies that employers are looking for. Therefore, there's a focus on three main things. They want strategic thinking, so they need you to be able to look at the entity and come up with suggestions that are strategic in nature. They have to be suggestions that will work in terms of the direction of the business, and you need to be able to prioritize and problem solve. That is what employers want, and therefore that is what this exam is seeking to test. So that's a little bit of an introduction to the Strategic Business Leader exam. We're going to go on in our sort of introduction phase of the course to talk about what exactly we're going to see, what skills we need within the Strategic Business Leader exam. Then we'll think about the exam itself, and then you'll be able to get on to actually cover the content, but thinking about all of these things we've mentioned in terms of what's required in the exam setting.